don't mind tonight. Play Corrigo.
Depends. Will your friend, the footballer, be there?
Oh, friend, football friend.
Oh, what a superb goal. Stephen Moore, that is extraordinary from Ben Garuccio.
You're listening to Football Friends with Ben Garuccio and Stefan Mork. It's episode 21 and arguably our most jam-packed episode yet. There's been plenty of news in the Australian footy-spheres this week and the boys are on hand to discuss it all. We preview the Socceroos' upcoming fixtures against Lebanon, the A-League All-Stars news and the latest developments from Auckland, Newcastle and Canberra. And of course, we couldn't forget to go through the weekend that was in the A-League men. All that and more coming up on Football Friends.
Hello guys and welcome to episode 21 of Football Friends Pod. We're back for another week. It was another exciting week of A-League football before the international break. We nearly had the double, Steph. We planned the pod celebration and we both did the celebration, but only one of the goals stood in the end.
Oh, yeah.
How was your week? How was your game? You boys got the win. Should have been on the score sheet. I think it was fucking harsh offside from what I could see on TV. But how was your week? How was the game?
Yeah, it was, I guess going into a game like that when you're playing against another team that's down the bottom. We watched you guys the night before. And when you were, I think you went 1-0 up and then we were like, shit, like we're last now. We're bottom. So, it's never nice being down there. And then when obviously you guys drew, so we weren't on the bottom, but still it was a big game to kind of jump a few spots upwards. And to be honest, I don't think the quality of the game was great, but in those games, it's really just about winning. And the first 30, 40 minutes were pretty good. We had a lot of chances. Hiroshi had a few chances. Nesta hit the post. AP had a big chance for them, but and then the offside goal, I thought perfect. This is just what I need. A nice goal from a corner. And, you know, when, not just for me, but when you take that long to come up with a decision, I think we've spoken about it all year, whether it's offside, whether it's a red card, like it's obviously not clear and obvious. Like the whole rule of even offside, and I know it's black and white, the whole rule of offside was so it doesn't give the attacker an advantage. If you're 1 centimeter in front of someone, you're not really getting a big advantage. So I know Arsene Wenger's spoken about it, potentially looking to change the offside rule and have it, any part of your body is onside, then the goal would count. And I personally, being an attacker, think that's better. I think, we want more goals in the game. There's still always going to be that, well, it's 1 centimeter on or 1 centimeter off, but at least then it's more, you've got your whole body in front of someone. That's a massive advantage. If you've just got a foot in front of someone, well, I don't really see that as a big advantage, but that's probably just me being sour about not getting my goal. But you were on the score sheet. No teeth were missing after this game, but you did cop an elbow. How nervous were you that the tooth was back out?
Nah, I wasn't that nervous. It wasn't that hard, to be fair, the elbow, but I said to the ref, I said, fucking hell, he's just elbowed me in the face. And he goes, yeah, I know. I said, yeah, so it's not a free kick then if you elbow someone in the face. And he was like, nah, that's not a free kick for me. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to go fucking elbow someone in the face and tell me if it's a free kick. So it was a bit frustrating, but yeah, didn't lose any teeth, thankfully. Set up the goal for Pena, set up the goal for Economides as well, which was good. Straight off my head, straight into his path, and he finished it. So, it was nice in the end to kind of make amends. And I think it would have been pretty harsh if we got nothing out of that game, because I actually thought we controlled the game for the most part, especially a team like Victory, who usually create a lot of chances. To be honest, they didn't have too much. Fornaroli didn't have too many chances, but even when you just give them a sniff, like that first goal, then all of a sudden they get the lift and we end up conceding another one. So it was good in the end to have that character, but just like you guys at the moment, we need 3 points. 1 point's not really enough. So it's frustrating in a way, but I think the way we've been going the last probably 5 or 6 games now has been completely different to the rest of the season. I think that's a credit to the lads for not really chucking the towel in at this time of the year, because I suppose it could be easy to do that if you've got the wrong group.
Yeah, and I think that's again, something that we've spoken about in the 21 episodes is that promotion and relegation. And I just think it's, as a player, you're not intentionally going out there to lose games, but when there's nothing on the line, we're human beings at the end of the day, there's nothing on the line. If you're coming last, sometimes it is really challenging to get motivated for it. And we're still in kind of, I guess, the chance for finals. We've looked at the draw. We think we've got winnable games. There's 6 games. If we get 18 points, I think that takes us to 40 odd points in the league. And that should get you finals. But I'm sure there's a lot of other teams that are thinking the same. But for you guys, you want to finish the season well, because you take it into next pre-season, and hopefully eventually, once we do have promotion and relegation, these types of conversations will be completely different, because when you're fighting for your money, you're fighting for survival in the first league, it means a whole lot more, and even for the fans. So interesting. But I guess the big game of the weekend, which happened on the Wednesday night, was it? The Melbourne, or the Tuesday night,
I think. But obviously, we already recorded before it, so we're coming a bit late on this one. But there's been quite a bit of a narrative that's, I suppose, come from that game, and then obviously the game on the weekend. But let's touch on the first one, which was Melbourne City 7, Western Sydney Wanderers 0, and that was just fucking crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's one of those games, to be honest, where obviously you score a couple of goals really quickly. And again, without being in the dressing room, you never really know what's going on with certain teams. But it seemed like, Melbourne City before this game were a bit of a shambles. And they come out and smack West Sydney, Terry Antonis, against his team, I guess. And this is where football, as a player, everything, which you shouldn't take it personally, but it does become personally. If you get frozen out from a coach and they think you're not good enough, or they think you're on too much money potentially for what you're bringing, so try and get rid of you, and you get treated that way, you always want to play that little bit better against them. And to score a goal like that, he was obviously very, very happy with himself, as you would be. It's goal of the season, and I don't think you ever strike a ball better than that.
Well, I'm going to eat my words, because when Bruno scored the goal against Central Coast, I said, nah, I'm calling it now. That's goal of the season. But I think he's been picked, because left foot, flick it over his head, right foot, volley from halfway. And look, I don't know what was said in the change rooms of the Western Sydney camp. There's been, I guess, a few rumours that have been circling about that there was a bit of argy-bargy in the change rooms afterwards, which, to be honest, wouldn't surprise me that much, because after you lose a game in that manner, there's always going to be tempers flaring. And I think we've seen that before in our career, and it's not that really exciting, to be honest, the story that comes out of it. Probably the media run with it a little bit if there's a bit of argy-bargy, but that's normal in professional sport. When people are trying their best, they're playing for their living, and they want to win, and they're putting everything out there. It's normal that people are going to get angry when you have a result like that. But I just think it's absolutely crazy, because Western Sydney, for me, the first part of the season were probably one of the standout teams. And to see them kind of drop off like this is quite crazy, to be honest. And Melbourne City as well, you look at them, they've struggled compared to obviously where they've been. They've struggled this season. But when they're on, they're on. They've smashed some teams. They smashed Brisbane. When they're on, they can score a lot of goals. And I think that's what you're going to get from a team that's got quality like Melbourne City. But yeah, just a crazy game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the last six odd games in the season, I personally think whoever makes the finals, has a very good chance in winning it, because it's, it hasn't been, 2, 3, 4 teams consistently being up there the whole year. It's kind of been going up and down and up and down. And if you get a Melbourne City, for example, making it, just scraping in potentially, on paper at the start of the year, you're probably thinking, yeah, they're one of the favourites. And, if they come good at the right time with the quality that they've got, it's funny how football can change so quickly, and especially with the setup we've got with the playoffs, obviously, the final series. So I'm interested to see how that pans out. But going on to Wellington, Sydney, just as you maybe think Wellington are dropping off. They lost to, They lost to City. They were 1-0 down to Sydney. They come back and, in front of 18,000 odd, which is unbelievable in Auckland. For me, I can't understand how they get 18,000 for a game against Sydney, and in Wellington they're not getting 10 plus every single week. But it's good signs for Auckland FC coming in, which again we'll touch on them a little bit afterwards. The streaker with the PR stint, he's got his hands on a jersey. He's made a dash through, but he just kind of stopped in the middle of the field. He needed to keep going and actually try and get away from the security because they came and smashed him.
He needed to put the afterburners on. I don't know what he was doing. Then he got decked. I don't know. I reckon he could have got away from that security guard. But yeah, you're right. He just stopped. I thought he was going to get injured, but it was a Costa show. Honestly, he's flying. He's absolutely flying this year. Set up the first goal. It was an own goal, which they called offside originally, and then they reversed it, and then scored the other. He's just on fire. And yeah, to be fair, Wellington, that's huge, that crowd in Auckland, and it just goes to show the appetite that's there in New Zealand, and hopefully Auckland can hit the ground running. And I think the kit actually looks decent on the geezer that was running through. It wasn't much of a streaker, but he was repping. He was repping.
Painted himself. But no, I think if you're a club looking to come in there, and we've spoken about, no disrespect to your boys, Western United and MacArthur, they've come into the league, and they fans-wise, they haven't really brought that. I guess that hype and that excitement that a Western Sydney did when they came in. So we need to get these next ones right, because you want teams to be getting a lot of fans. So if you get Auckland in and they're averaging 10 to 15,000 at that stadium, it's quality. It's obviously a local derby there. So it'll be really interesting to see, if you've been supporting Wellington for the last, however many years, do you quickly just jump ship onto Auckland if you're living there? Or do you stick with the Knicks? So that would be an interesting one for the locals. But they're, them and Central Coast are still the teams to beat, you'd imagine. But going on to the next game when the Bulls against Brisbane played at Ballymore, which was an interesting one. The first men's game they actually had here. They've had a few women's game. A disappointing crowd, but the actual stadium itself, which I think they're doing the redevelopment so you can't use the top stand of one of the sides. But the stadium itself, if it had good public transport, is perfect, isn't it?
It's honestly a perfect stadium, and it looked good. It looks good on TV. It's not too small where it doesn't look professional. That's the kind of stadiums we need to be playing in. And I don't know what the crowd was for the game. Didn't look great.
It's only three and a half, I think it was, which is not great. But Brisbane are struggling last minute.
Yeah,
don't think the weather was great. But if you permanently moved there, maybe that's your that's the way to go. I know, again, it's hard transport-wise to get there potentially, but if you just get 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, however much it holds every single week, I'm sure you'd be making more money than playing out of Suncorp and closing off half the stadium and playing on a shit pitch as well. So interesting to see what they do for next season, and their premier has just come out with a ludicrous option for what they're going to do for the Olympics. So hopefully he gets voted out, and the person that comes in from Liberal actually changes what they're going to do and builds us a little boutique football stadium, because what he's talking to do with Cusack, the athletics, doesn't benefit anyone. And the football game itself, the Bulls got up 2-1. We should touch on that. Interesting. I kind of thought MacArthur would drop off a little bit, especially with the AFC Cup games. But they've almost cemented their spot in the finals now, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they're 6 points clear now in the finals. And yeah, they're just one of those teams that have kind of flown under the radar this season, just gone about their business and picked up results where they've needed to. And yeah, they're in a great position to be the highest finish for them, I think, ever. I know they made the finals the first year, but they went out to us when I was in Melbourne City. So yeah, they're doing really well. And Rafa Borges Rodriguez scored a top goal in that game, and then Uscott got the other one. So, yeah, they're in a really good position going into these last few games.
Yeah, it's Raphael will be I think getting a few people overseas interested. He's still quite young, scored a lot of goals, and that's the thing with young players. Obviously he wasn't getting the opportunity in Melbourne City. He's moved across, taken him a couple seasons, but he's looking really good. And disappointingly for Bernardo, who moved across from Adelaide, just when you start to find some form, and he ruptures his Achilles. So that's what is that, 9-12 months, and that's the cruel game of football. Just when you think things are kind of going your way, you cop a shit injury, something you can't really prevent it. It's and not love it in a good way, but I love speaking to the physios or people about it. It's like, is it the exact movement that he made that made him do that? And if he didn't do that movement, would he have been fine? Or was it kind of like a ticking time bomb ready to kind of go off? And they never really have a clear answer for it. But for me, it's just insane how, that movement in that exact time obviously made you do that injury. When if, you didn't do that, maybe you would have been fine. It's just sad for the player.
Yeah. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery, because I think he moved from Adelaide and there was quite a lot of talk about it, I know, from Carl and people at Adelaide, but it looked like it was the right move because of the opportunities he was getting at MacArthur, and had the game where he scored the double. And yeah, it's just disappointing, especially for a young player who has had a bit of a tough time with injuries, and also being out of the team and not getting maybe as much opportunity as he would have liked.
Isn't he going out with your cousin?
Yeah, both him and Rafa are going out with my cousins. Fucking hell.
There you go. That's pretty crazy. And now they both moved to the same team, so the two cousins can be living with each other.
Literally, they do. They go over every couple of weeks, and I always see that they're in Sydney. So,
they like the Brazilian boys, huh?
Yeah, they like the Brazilians, and as long as they're
the Brazilian barbecue,
as long as the lads are taking care of the girls, then it's no problem at all. But no, they're both really good lads. Obviously, we played with them, or I played with them at Melbourne City. They've both gone on now. They're doing well for themselves. So hopefully Bernardo has a speedy recovery. Hopefully Rafa keeps banging him in, and hopefully he can take my cousin to somewhere in Europe to be there for the next few years of his career.
There you go. And last game of the round, which was, I guess, a massive game for West Sydney to bounce back. What was it? They played Tuesday, and then they flew, I think, straight to Perth for their game. And to get the win away in Perth is tough. Regardless whether you think it's, they deserve, they played well and whatever. Winning's the most important thing. And, for those players, especially going into this international break, I would have hated to have lost that game as well, knowing that you've got probably 2 weeks of torture. So at least they've managed to get the 3 points, and can kind of regroup and get ready for the last 6 games of the season.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of big wins or important wins for your football club across the season, I think it doesn't really come much bigger than that. And although it's not, maybe a massive game where you're playing against a top team or anything like that, it's after what happened 7-0 away to Melbourne City, you play a few days later. They went straight, I think, from Melbourne to Perth. So they would have all been together. I couldn't imagine it would have been that happy of a camp after the result. So, yeah, to get that win for them.
Imagine the dinner after that game.
Yeah, I don't think, it would have been one of those where you just got your fucking head down, you're on your phone, and you're like, I don't want to laugh or I don't want to smile, because if the coach sees me smiling or laughing right now, he's probably going to kill me and I won't play the next game. So, yeah, it's the worst. It's honestly the worst when it's like that, and especially after a result like that, you don't want to still be with the team for the next few days, having to go straight to Perth. So, would have been a tough trip, but fair play to the players for coming out after a result like that and getting the win. And Perth actually had a lot of chances in that game. Your boy Tags scored again, so he's equal with Bruno. So he's absolutely flying, and now he's off to the Roos as well.
Yeah, which is very, very well deserved. Which is a great little segue into the Socceroos. Big couple qualifiers against Lebanon. 2 home games, essentially. They're then unable to play at home, so they've taken their home leg to Canberra. So it's great for the players as well. If you're coming, especially if you're coming all the way from Europe, you get to actually stay in Australia for a bit of a longer period of time. You don't have to worry about time difference, climatizing to the weather. And the one thing that, again, like it's something that it always happens with football. We never get the right media. And I know the Matildas are so big right now, and they're the number 1 sporting team in the country. But I can't understand the lack of media coverage for the Socceroos still. Like, this is a World Cup qualifier, which is bigger than, let's say, the Matildas Olympic qualifiers that they were having. But the mainstream media, you wouldn't even know that the game's on. Besides, obviously, if you're on Twitter and you're looking for stuff and Instagram, there's been nothing that I've seen in comparison to the Matildas. And yeah, it comes down to a little bit of the demand, but these players here are the best in the country as well. So for the young boys and girls wanting to watch players and know that the game's on, I feel like, you should be putting it on. Instead, they're talking about the Tassie fucking Devils that are coming in 4 years' time. And it's just, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I can't understand it. And I take my hat off to the Matildas for the brand that they've become, because it's not just about following the Matildas, it's actually the whole brand of it, and their following right now is just astronomical. But I think the Socceroos need to build towards, being the same as the Matildas. And for people that love football, that's what I can't understand, because I'll go and watch the Matildas and the Socceroos because I love football. It's not like, I'm going to go watch the boys because I don't want to watch the girls. No, if I like football, then there's a big game on, the Matildas are playing, well, I'm going to go watch that. Now there's a Socceroos are playing in Melbourne, I'm going to go try and watch that, because these are players playing at the top level. So that's where everyone's aspiring to be. So that's what I can't really understand, but I hope that they do get a good crowd, especially the Thursday. That's meant to be obviously our home game at Combank, one of the best stadiums in the country. That part of Australia and that part of Sydney, they love their football. They always pull in big crowds for Western Sydney. So hopefully a lot of them can get behind their boy Brandon Barello is there. Yeah. So
and a lot of Lebanese fans, I'm sure, will be out and about as well. So
maybe.
It should be a good game. But you know what I honestly think it is, and I'm not trying to hopefully offend any of our listeners or anything, but I feel like the Matildas have got a lot of the families, a lot of young kids, a lot of the families that, maybe the parents, they like football, maybe they don't really like it, but their kids obviously love it. And probably the ones that are playing at NPL level or in the grassroots, where a lot of also the Socceroos and potentially, the other ones that we think we know more about football and we watch the Premier League and everything. It's almost where the quality of the Socceroos is no good. I'm not going to watch that. Or the same with, I'm not going to watch the quality of the A-League because that's no good. But the quality of the Matildas is obviously a very high level. But the quality of obviously the Socceroos is also the best in Australia. It's the exact same thing. So it doesn't make sense that the hype isn't there. And the young boys and the young girls, obviously, with the Matildas playing in the home World Cup and the Disney documentary, that went crazy. And the whole country obviously was in love with the Matildas. So that's something that it's very hard for the Socceroos to replicate that without a home World Cup. But the media can do a big job in trying to actually to help that brand as well. And it's for whatever reason, they obviously don't care about pushing that. So hopefully we get a big win on home in the first leg, and then some of the new boys that are in the camp can get their debuts. And it's obviously a special moment for a lot of players getting their first call-up. You saw Nisbet speaking about how we got announced in the team meeting. And it's something that every young boy and every young girl we would dream of from a young age, of playing for the Socceroos and Matildas. That's the biggest thing that you can get to go to a World Cup. So hopefully they can make their debuts, the ones that haven't, playing in front of home a home crowd would be amazing, and to get that next step onto the journey of the World Cup as well. So fingers crossed they get the job done. And the other big news of the week, which just got announced, well, I think yesterday the first bit of news came, and it was about the Spurs Newcastle game. And then there was the uproar around, there should be the All-Stars game with it as well. And then this morning, the APL have actually come out saying there is the All-Stars game with the women's All-Stars are playing against Arsenal, and the men's will be playing against Newcastle United in a double header, which I'm not really too sure that's the best idea, because it's a long time to be sticking around for two games. Friday at 5:15, I think it said the first game, and the second one's probably 8:00, which is it's a cool idea, and obviously that was what they were thinking with the grand final. But the double header, not sure about, but the actual concept of it, I think is great.
Yeah, I just don't like about these games is that the timing of it with the A-League finals, obviously, with I think the grand final is a couple of days after that. So the teams that are in the grand final won't be able to participate. And it was the same the year where we were in the grand final and they played against Barcelona, which fucking hell, who wouldn't want to play against Barcelona? So, I was meant to be in that team and then I miss out because of the grand final.
No need to bring it up. Just because you were in the team, you don't need to bring it up.
Well, it's not just me though. I'm sure it's other players that were in the team as well. Like, I can understand it because I've been in that position. Luckily, we won the grand final. I couldn't imagine being a Melbourne City player. If I was meant to be playing against Barcelona, I missed out because of the grand final, and then you don't even win the grand final. So it's just annoying, I think, the timing of it. I don't think you'd be able to do it later in our preseason, because those teams are then going to want to be playing against top opposition and actually getting themselves ready for the season. So even for them, like, they're coming straight after their season as well and playing these games. So I don't like the timing of it, the idea of it. I love it. The chance to be able to play against top opposition for both the men's and women's is fantastic. I just wish that you could actually see the best players in the league playing in it, because whoever's in that final this year, they're the best players throughout the year because their team's on top, and those players aren't going to be in it. So then you've got players that are getting called up from other teams that maybe wouldn't have been in the All-Stars team. So, and then also aside from that, you've got, I think that players from every club need to be represented, where I don't really agree with that either. I think the best players from the year should be in that team. So,
is that how it is?
Well, that's how it's been in years gone by. So there's been nominations from every team, which I don't agree with, because, if Central Coast have got 8 players in there, then they've got 8 players in there. They were the best players throughout the year.
Yeah.
So that's how I think it should be in a more cutthroat world. But it's an
interesting one. And at the end of the day, like, it's a business, and, Tottenham and Newcastle 3 days after the Premier League ends are jumping on, or probably the day after, are jumping on a private jet to come down here. But, they've just played a 38-game season, plus cups, plus international games, plus everything else. You've got the Euros, I think, this off-season. So I understand that, and I'm not trying to be sour about anything to do with it, because I think it's a good thing. We don't get to watch a lot of top-level teams here. The All-Stars game, it's a great thing. The Irakundas and the Quolves that played in the last one against Barcelona, that can spark interest. So there's a lot of positives from it. But from the point of view of the players, like, man, you're traveling 20 hours to come to Australia. You're jet lagged. They're not going to want to be playing these games, and that's the hard thing to it. Because as much as it's a buzz for us fans here in Australia, like, I'm sure it's the last thing that they want to do, but they're worried about the club just getting an extra $5 million to pay some of the wages, and that's the hard thing with it. But anyway, it is what it is. I think the good thing about it is that this can be an annual thing. Hopefully it can generate some money for us here in Australia in the APL, so they can actually sort out what's going on, because just as we've been recording, obviously the news, or the interview with the new, who is it, the CEO or the chairman of the APL's come out and saying that they can't kind of keep any clubs afloat. They did it with Perth. They're not looking to do it with Newcastle. They're not looking to do it with, I think it's Canberra United for the women's side of things. And as a player, it's just deflating to hear these stories coming about because, you know, you may have signed a contract at Newcastle Jets, or if you're a female player and you can't sign a new contract at Canberra, you know, your whole lives are determined by where you're playing, your contract. And, you know, it's not just, oh, you know, I'm worried about my next move, but, you know, you might have kids in school, you may have home loans, you may have things that you're looking at, a partner that's in that, you know, state that's working or whatever it is. And, you know, we're 3 months out from the season being done and dusted, and you got to start pre-season. And some of these people are probably thinking, well, what's going on with my future here? And that's from a player's point of view. But then from the fans' point of view, you know, the same thing. You're trying to get us to pay money to become a member of a team, but it just seems like everything's in shambles. And I just hate it as the player for me, that we have no control over this. And it's just, you know, this is our livelihood. This is our dream was to be a footballer. We're so passionate about Australian football. That's why we started this podcast. And the stuff that just keeps going on, it's just, you know, like one step forward with Auckland and then 2 steps back with this negative news. And I don't know, like it's quite tiring, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not what you want. It's not what you want to hear as an Aussie football fan and as a player playing in the league. It's definitely not what you want to hear, because Newcastle are a foundation club in this league. Like, they've been through great times and they've been through turbulent times as well, just like any club. But to think that potentially there won't be a Newcastle Jets is something that you wouldn't really imagine. So they need to get it sorted. I'm not sure the actual position of it and how long this will go on for, if there's a timeline on it. But, you know, I really do hope that Newcastle get an owner, get a bidder, someone that wants to come in and, you know, bring the club back to life. Because you look at the club, the city, it's somewhere that needs football. I think it's somewhere in the past when they've been doing well, have brought in great crowds. So there's definitely the appetite there. I think they're definitely one of those places that people jump on the bandwagon when they're doing well. And if I was someone from the outside looking at that, I'd be thinking, well, you know, what do I need to do if I'm going to take over this club to get the club back to, you know, near the top of the table, and then everything else will follow. It's a smaller city where there's not too many people, but that's also a blessing in disguise sometimes, because you don't have to fight against other teams and even other codes. You know, you've got the Knights in the NRL, but there's not too much going on in Newcastle. So what's the reason why they can't, you know, come to a game every second?
Yeah, like, and this is where I know it's hard to do, but, you know, like in Germany where they've got the membership funded models, like, I don't know if it's possible because, again, they're probably asking for a ridiculous price. But, like, this is the stuff where, you know, you get 10,000 members all paying, I don't know, whatever it is, $1,000, and you have the chance to own a club, or you have a local business owner that owns a large chunk of it, but then they look to sell off the other shares to members. That's where it needs to be, like, you know, and I think that's where fans will feel a lot more invested, because they have a say in what's going on in their club. Where at the moment you've just got these potential rich owners coming in and they've all got their own interests. So that's something going forward. And, you know, not that I don't want it to be like the NSL where it collapses the A-League and it means that then we start up a new league. And, but, you know, like the stuff that you read, it's not looking great. And we've got obviously getting the second division going, which, you know, maybe it means that the second division and the A-League can have promotion relegation a lot quicker because of the financial problems that we're in. But a lot of people have invested a lot of money into the current game and the current structure. So I don't think, you know, they're going to go down without swinging. So it's going to be interesting. And it's, again, as players, something we don't find out a lot about, but it's something that, you know, you're always, it's in the back of your mind, and we shouldn't be thinking about this. We should just be worrying about going out there and playing. But that's all we've got time for on the negative topics. We can go into our... Go on.
I actually, while I was sitting down today, because I don't have any kids to be looking after and I don't need to worry about changing nappies like you, but I actually wrote down a rough A-League Men's All-Stars team from
Did you?
the season so far. Yeah, from what I've seen so far, I'll read it out to you. You tell me if you agree, disagree, or think I've got no idea. And I'd be interested to see some teams from listeners at home as well to see what they're thinking if they think I've got no idea. But I'll go for Alex Paulson in goals. It would have been Gauchi had he not have left, because I think he was the best keeper in the league. And that's why Aston Villa came in and got him. So I've gone with Alex Paulson. I think, for his first year, he's been unreal. I think Wellington have never kept as many clean sheets as they have this season. So that's testament to him. And then I've gone with Tim Payne at right back. I think he's got 4 assists so far. And, he's an NZ international. He's playing in that same team, obviously. Got Marcelo from Western Sydney, because I just think he's probably the best centre-back in the league, in my opinion. I think, he was missing in the game against City, came back in for the game against Perth, and then, they didn't cop 7 in that game, so it must be all down to him. Brian Cowtack from Central Coast, Jacob Farrell from Central Coast in at left back as well, because I can't put myself in the team. We are bottom of the league, so Jacob Farrell, I think for me, he's definitely one of the best left backs in the league for the last few years. I think he's someone that I rate highly because I look at my fullbacks with quite a bit of attention. I think also Moragas from Newcastle, but I think out of the two, you've got one team that's, second last and another team that's second. So that was a bit of a no-brainer to pick him. And then I've gone for 4 in the midfield: Barbarouses, Arslan, Nisbet, and Torres. So I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory. And then up front, I've gone with Fornaroli and Taggart. And honestly, it was only because I was looking at the stats right now, because if it was last week, I probably would have said AP because he was the joint leader. And out of Fornaroli, Taggart, and Stanislopoulos, it's flip a coin, to be honest, this season from the form. But I think at the moment, Fornaroli and Taggart, they're 1 goal ahead. So we'll see how it ends up at the end of the season. He's definitely an honourable mention, Stanislopoulos. I also have got Rufa, Davila, Jermaine, Pena, Girdwood, Reich, and Nesta Irankunda as honourable mentions. So I don't know what you think about that, Steph.
It's not a bad squad. Not sure defensively how they'll go against Newcastle. But no, I think I don't think it should be one from each team, or someone has to be selected from each team. I think, you should pick the best players, and it's always hard when you're thinking about it, because straight away your mind goes to the teams that are at the top. There's a reason why they're at the top. They've obviously got players that are playing well individually, or you'd assume so. But sometimes a lot of it does come down to, tactics of the team and everything like that. But like you said, when you're talking about Farrell and Moragas, like straight away you just think, well, one's finished, or one's coming second, one's second bottom. So it's a no-brainer.
I think that's got merit. I think that does have merit because, look, you've got Taggart and Stanislopoulos. Their teams are, second and third last.
Yeah.
And they're, they're leading the goal scorers. So you're always going to have individual players that are standing out, even in a team that's not doing so well. I think Pena in the last 5 or 6 games has probably looked like, one of the best players in the league. So I can understand it, but I just think it does have merit as well. I think, there's the season where we were winning it, we kept so many clean sheets that year, and then automatically people start looking at goalkeepers and defenders when you're keeping so many clean sheets. So I think it is a team sport, and then there's individuals in that are also excelling.
No, it's the reason why the team that normally wins it or is near the top, they sell a lot of players, and the teams that are near the bottom struggle, because if you're a scout or if you're another club looking in, you think, well, fuck, they can't be that great. They're coming near the bottom. But if you're winning it, all of a sudden it's like, shit, this is the best team in the league, and this guy's playing, and he's playing well. So that's just the way it works. But we'll see how you go.
Even the Ballon d'Or these days, like if you win the Premier League and the Champions League, a lot of the time you win it. Or if you win your domestic league and the Champions League, you win a World Cup these days, you win it. Like,
or if your name's Lionel Messi, you just
get it. Lionel Messi, you just win it no matter what. If your name's in the hat, then you win it. But yeah, like Haaland, people say Haaland should have won it.
Yeah, Yeah,
So-
it's hard. It's always hard. It's always hard. And it's, it's just a matter of opinion. At the end of the day, like, I think the good thing with the All-Stars, I think if they do like the fans vote, so certain players get voted in from the fans, because that's always good as well. Probably for us individually, the best award you could get is the PFA Player of the Season, because that's recognised from your fellow players and peers. That's actually probably the most. I'm not going to say it's the most important one for you, but like that's the one that probably does mean the most, I think, individually.
Yeah, I think to be recognised by players that you play against every week as, one of the standout players in the league is probably the best compliment you can get, because at the end of the day, they're the people that are also playing professionally. So they probably have some pretty good knowledge about the game, I would say.
You'd think so. But let's go into our questions from the listeners this week. We've got time for a few. It's always good. We appreciate everybody sending them in. So I'm going to read this one out, and it's for you, Ben. It's from Cine.Fox. When you get to this point of the season, how do you keep... I'm going to just change it because they've doesn't make a lot of sense, but how do you stay fresh and not burn out? And Ben, how do you still stay hungry to finish off the season? So I can answer the first bit for me. And I guess staying fresh is really just your recovery. I think mentally trying to switch off as much as possible, doing all the small things. If you have a good preseason, normally when you get to this stage of the season, you're all right. But for you, Ben, what do you do? And then, like you touched on earlier, how do you stay hungry when you're playing for not a whole lot?
Yeah, I think, look, I've always been a big believer that if you're a professional footballer, it doesn't matter if you're first or last, you should always give the same amount. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but I would never, ever want to be remembered as a player that would sack off a training session or not give 100% in a game when, I know there's probably hundreds of thousands of people out there that would have loved to have been playing in a professional football game, or even players that we've played with in the past that, their careers didn't go any further or they didn't get offered a new contract. And I just think, well, who would I be if I was not going to give 100% in a game? At the end of the day, you're playing for your mates that are next to you, that you're lining up with. And I'm just not someone that would be able to look in the mirror if I knew myself that I wasn't giving absolutely everything. And it's not just for your mates that you're playing with, it's the whole football club, because everyone works so hard. And I feel for everyone at Western this year because, they work so hard behind the scenes, and then they kind of go through it with us. They're not on the pitch with us, but they go through the low times with you, and it's really hard. And I feel bad for them after the game when we come in and you can see people are a bit deflated and things like that. And then also the fans, the ones that come out and, they pay money to come and watch us. So yeah, I just don't really understand anyone that wouldn't, or that would throw the towel in because they're bottom of the league and who cares now, the league's done, the season's done. Because at the end of the day, your job's a professional footballer. It's not that fucking hard, because we live the best life in the world getting to play the sport that we love. And, your career will be over one day. And I would hate to have to look back one day and be like, I wish I didn't do this, or I wish I didn't do that. So for me, the fundamental things are working hard every single day. And as I said, it sounds cliche, but that's just what I believe in.
Good answer.
Thanks. Thanks, Gary. We'll go next question from Max Davella. What is your favourite part about being a professional footballer, and why, Steph?
Yeah, I think my favourite part, probably there's two elements to it, or two. Yeah, it's the same thing almost, but individually, playing really well, the satisfaction that you get scoring a goal. For me, there's no better feeling in a game when you score a goal. Like you can't replicate that any other way. But winning a big game, winning a grand final, and playing really well in it is just that. Outside of obviously having kids or getting married, but it's a completely different feeling having done all of those. And what you get in football with that buzz of scoring a goal, playing a really good game, and then also as a team, when you walk into the change rooms afterwards and you've got the music blasting and you're just smiling and laughing with each other. If it's an away trip, you go back and you're having dinner and everyone's, like you said, on the flip side, everyone's deflated when you lose. Everyone's so happy. Nothing in the world matters in that moment. And I think for me, that's my favorite part, because you can have, so many struggles off the field, but when you get on it, when you play well individually, that feeling is something that I'm gonna miss. Hopefully I'm playing for another 10 years like Javi Lopez until I'm 38. But when I hang the boots up, I think that's what I'll miss the most. What about yourself?
Yeah, I would echo that. That feeling you get when you know that you've played to your full potential, because I think when you look back at your career, especially professional career, that kind of goes away. That fun feeling of when you were a kid, just, playing a game and you were just in that flow state and not even thinking about anything, or not thinking about, what if I make a mistake? I think once you go professional, it gets a lot harder. There becomes demands and there's a lot of pressure on you. And I think a lot of games that I've looked back, especially in my younger days, where I'm like, why did I play like that? Why was I afraid to try something? Or why was I afraid to miss a pass or make a mistake? There's nothing wrong with it, but those games where just everything just seems so clear, like your vision that you've got in that game just feels, every picture that you see just feels like so clear. I know what I'm going to do here. Yep, someone's pressing me here. I'm going to turn this way. And that feeling after playing a game like that is the best thing in the world. But then on the other side is just the change room, the banter. I think anyone that's been in a sporting environment will understand that it's not your usual, maybe office-like job. I think the banter that flies around in a change room is different gravy. Some of the things you hear in a football change room is just, the funniest things. And so many of my memories have also come off the pitch just with the people that I've had around me. And I think you always get to meet some interesting characters, some very funny people, and also, to hear some people's stories about their lives as well. So for me, the off-field stuff as well. It's not bad going to get a coffee every single day after training when you finish, especially in this country. We live a good life. We live in a beautiful country. You go get a coffee, you go get some lunch with your teammates, you play some cards. Whoever's the shittest at cards pays for lunch. And you just got to make sure you're not the shittest at cards, really.
Yeah. No, I think, you know what, like that, I didn't even think about that, but the off-field stuff, I think that's, we have such a good life here, and, that side of things where, you work hard and it's a 24/7 job, because what you eat, your sleep, that impacts your performance. So if you're wanting to be a true professional, it's 24/7. It's hard to, kind of leave the training ground and not be thinking about football. So it can be very, very stressful. But, the upside is so much bigger than the stresses that come with it. And it's something that, we'll definitely be missing. And a lot of coaches have said it to me, and people outside of the game is, the second you hang up the boots, you never get that feeling back. It's never the same. Being a coach, yes, there's certain elements, but it's not the same. You got to stay away from the players. You can't have the same sort of relationship, because you're benching someone one weekend, so you can't be taking the piss or going out for a few drinks or whatever it is with them, because it's a different relationship. And that's something that as players we all love. But we'll go on to the next question, and this is from Harry.Brian for both of us. What are some of the best ways you guys focus on your mental health and resetting your minds during a game? So I'll say, instead of mental health, maybe the mental resilience potentially. You can answer first if you want, Ben.
Yeah, I would say during a game. Was that the question?
Yeah. How do you reset during a game?
I think this is not a good
So when
question.
you've just when you've just fucking gone to win a defensive header, and instead of heading it one way, you just headed it straight down to Economides. How do you react from that to get the match equalizer? What are you telling yourself?
Well,
or maybe we don't want to know.
I'm probably Well, it used to be. What was it when I was young? The Hulk smash. I'd smash the ground with my hands. I think as I've gone through my career, I've just learned that if I don't believe in myself, then no one else is going to believe in me. And I think that's probably something I struggled with a lot, and I'm not really afraid to say that. I struggled a lot with nerves and probably performance anxiety to a certain extent as well when I was younger, because I used to put so much pressure on every single game that I had to be the best and I wasn't allowed to make a mistake. And I think now, and I got to thank probably the coaches here at West United and also the players and everything. But since I've come here, I've really felt like they do believe in me, and I think that always makes it easier as a player. But in a game, if I do make a mistake now, especially after my time in Scotland as well, where I doubted myself a lot, I've really learned to just never lose belief in yourself. And I think when I watch the top players in the world, they make so many mistakes and then they go on to maybe score a goal or 2 goals and win man of the match. And I used to be kind of defined by my first touch in a game. If I made a mistake, then I'd probably have an average game. And if I had a really good first touch, I'd have a great game. And now I've kind of learned to be a little bit more, I float around that medium kind of level and not get too high when it's good and not get too low when it's bad. And if I do make mistakes, I just never lose that belief in myself. And I feel like that's probably been the most important thing for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think every single player struggles with the mental side of the game, whether you're at NPL level, in juniors and even in elite level like us, because it's not spoken about enough. And we don't have a lot of money in football, which is spoken about a lot. And the sports psych and the mental side of things is probably the last thing that people look to invest in. But I think it's the most important, and it's something that I've obviously been passionate about for a long time. And for me, I think it's just trying to have cues. So like during a game, you self-talk, it's there, that inner chat, whether it's good or bad, you're always saying things to yourself and nobody knows. And the stuff you say to yourself is horrible a lot of the times, but I try and just reset. So if the ball goes out of play, or if the ball goes for a corner, or if there's a certain passage where I get a second to kind of relax, I'll write down my goals on my hand, let's say, in just the initials, and I'll look down at that, and that's my reset. So I focus on those 3 things, because if I'm focusing on the pass that I've just missed, or the touch that I've done that went straight to the opposition, I'm not thinking about the next thing, and I'm probably going to make another mistake. So I try and just really focus in on, all right, these are my 3 goals. This is how I play my best if I achieve these 3 goals. And it's not something that's outcome focused. It's more about the process. But that's what I've done, and it's definitely helped me. You see a lot of AFL players and rugby league players as well. They'll have the tape on and they'll have a message on there. So that's another thing. It could just be something just to reset your mind, because when you're out there in the game, the stadium can become a very daunting place when the crowd starts to jeer or boo, or you're getting the ball, and it's not easy, and it's something that you need to work on just the same way you work on your first touch. You got to spend time, do it in training, do it in all games, and eventually you'll get better at it the more you kind of go about it.
Yeah. I think every footballer's been in a game where they're thinking, get me the fuck off this pitch. Like, I do not want the ball, because I'm shitting myself. And, we always joke about that tournament in Spain, but I think back to that tournament where I just played the worst, and that's all I was thinking every single time. I don't want the ball. I hope the ball doesn't come to me. And
it keeps coming to you.
And it just keeps coming, and you keep losing it, and you keep making mistakes. And it's like, that's the worst thing in the world. You're playing the sport that you love. You end up hating it because you're like, what's going on? And that's all just to do with what's happening up here. It doesn't have anything to do with what's happening at your feet, because you can have the best touch in the world, but if your mind's telling you that you're no good, you're going to be no good. But for the goals, so like, just to give people, I suppose, an idea, what would you usually write down for a game? You said it's obviously it's not outcome focused, it's more processes. So what are like 3 things, let's say, you would focus on, or what did you focus on maybe in the last game? I'm sure
sometimes they're a little bit different, but like last game, I think it was energy, so high energy. So I guess the way I describe energy for myself is like, obviously with and without the ball, but when I play my best, I've got a lot of energy. So I'm pressing all the time. I'm trying to win the ball and then making forward runs. So that is, whether I, do that every single time or not, it's not something that, I need to score 2 goals or I need to make 100% passes, because that's hard to do. And that's, if I make a mistake, well, then my goal's not going to come through. So I try and focus on things that are a little bit more in my control. So energy, face forward and play forward, because, if I'm receiving the ball in the pocket, playing forward. Also, if I'm turning and playing forward, it means I'm probably confident because I've scanned. I know when to go forward. Where if you're playing backwards all the time, you're probably not confident. So I'm trying to kind of make myself think that I am confident, because I guess what comes first, the confidence or the good performance? I think the confidence in yourself has to come first. And then the last one for this game was to shoot. Any chance I got was just to kind of shoot. And what, did I do it all perfect? No chance. Far from it. But that's kind of something that I've tried to do, and it's helped me become a little bit more consistent within the games. And again, sometimes you go through a whole game and I'm like, I did not even think about what my goals were, because you're just so in the moment.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like, well, did I play? Well, yeah, I played okay. So maybe subconsciously I was thinking about it, or you know what? Focus again on that training, and then in the game next week I'll do it again. So it's never going to be perfect, but it's something that's it's so tough. And I think the best players have this arrogance about them, and they have so much self-confidence. And not in any disrespectful way to you, but I'll put you in the same category as me. We probably don't have that just pure belief and arrogance, where you walk onto a field and you just believe so much in yourself. And I don't know if that comes naturally to some people, but there's some players that have that at the top level, and they fucking make these mistakes and they never seem to change. Like, their body language never changes, the way they pass the ball, receive the ball. And it's like, fuck, you've just made so many mistakes, and they look like they almost just don't care.
Yeah. Cristiano Ronaldo is probably the best example, just because every single person has watched him. If you're a football fan, you've definitely watched him, and he's just the best example, because especially in his older years, like how many chances he misses, or how many games where he doesn't score, and he doesn't do that much off the ball because that's not the player that he is anymore. So then he just absolutely cops it. And if he tries to dribble, he's maybe doesn't have it as much as what he used to. So it's not as if he looks like an unbelievable player like a Messi who actually runs the game. Everything runs through him and he gets assists and things like that. They're completely different players. But just his self-belief, there's not a second in the day where he wouldn't think that he's the best footballer on the planet. And that's a gift. But yeah, it's actually really interesting. Like, even now that you're speaking about it, I'm not someone that writes down my goals, but that's my self-talk. So before a game, like even against Victory, for example, like before every game, I say I want to be aggressive, because that's the kind of fullback that I think I'm playing my best, like what you say, when I'm aggressive. So I'll try and get there on the winger's touch. I don't want to let them, have time to run at me. I don't want to, be pulling out of 50-50s, because, that means that I'm probably not that confident, or I'm maybe a little bit on the back foot. So, and then when Arzani came on, like, I'm straight away, as soon as he's coming on, I'm thinking, fuck, I need to be aggressive. I need to be on him every single touch, because if you give a player like Arzani time to run at you, he's probably going to do you more often than not, because that's his strength. So yeah, it's funny. I don't write it down, but I subconsciously kind of, that self-talk is always there, and telling myself, and even shooting, like what you said, recently, a lot of people always say to me, you get in good positions and then you always try passing it off. So, recently that has been something that I've thought about a lot, and as, I don't write it down, but I've kind of just been, when I get in that position, you know what, I'm going to fucking take a shot for myself. So it's funny, I think you talk to yourself like that, you keep telling yourself these things, and eventually, 9 times out of 10, these things kind of start falling your way. And I think just becoming aware of situations in a game, and actually where you're going to be able to improve or affect the game a little bit more, and recognizing that is probably the most important part.
Yeah. Like we have so many great tools now, and even at NPL level, like all of their games, like when we were younger, we never got recordings of games. Like, I think maybe at Coffs Harbour potentially, or the NTC Challenge, they were recording those. But when we were at Adelaide City or wherever we were playing, like, you never got your games recorded. Where now they've got the video cameras and everything set up. So like, if you're a young player, you can go back and you can watch your games and you can see what you did well, what you need to improve on. You can look at your body language when you make a mistake and see how you react, or your positioning. All of these things, these tools that are amazing. But again, they're tools only if you use them. And then you actually go away from that and realize, shit, okay, this is what I did well, so I'm going to keep doing that. But these are the things I didn't do well, so I'm going to work on that. And if you're lucky enough to have a really good coach that does that with you individually, even better. But we're at a professional level, and we've had coaches that don't say boo to you. So you need to take that initiative yourself. And that's probably something I don't know if I ever want to coach, but if I do go into that field, that's probably the thing that I would find most rewarding, is getting individual players to kind of have that belief in themselves, give them that confidence. Because I would want every player, when they walk out onto the field, to think, fuck, I'm the best player on this field, individually, as a team. And, you get players to believe in themselves and then to believe in you as the coach. Like, fuck, it's incredible, the difference. It's not saying one coach is bad or not, or good. It's just that I think that side of the things, that the mental side of it, that's the biggest challenge. If you get that and you unlock that potential in every player, well, they're going to do anything for you. And even when they make mistakes, they're not going to care about it because they're not thinking about the negatives. So it's interesting. And Ange is probably the best that I've ever seen. And even now at Tottenham, and you listen to all the players, the way they speak when they play under Ange, they all use the same words because he's saying those words in training. He's saying them in the team meetings. And I guarantee you, subconsciously, they're then saying those words in press conferences without even knowing they're saying them, because he's literally planting the seed. And then, like what you're talking about, that self-talk, he said it to you during the week, and now you're saying it to yourself before the game. This is what I need to do. So, very, very interesting. It's scary sometimes when you're having the negative thoughts, but when things are going well, it's a great place. It's a great place to be. But I think that's all we've got time for that. We'll quickly go through the round 22 preview.
No, we don't need. We'll leave it for next week because we got the boys. It's Adelaide United versus Western United. It's all happening. I don't even know. Maybe we don't do a podcast next week because we got the game to. We'll do a podcast.
We'll have to do the podcast. Maybe you come in Thursday and we'll do one in person. No, we can't. We can't do that. But massive game. To be honest, it will be a big one. Friday night we play at Cooper's. No better place to be playing football, I think. And there'll have to be something on the line. Maybe we can think about it and we can put it out on the socials.
Maybe we'll get people to put, if you're listening, if you got anything, a forfeit, some sort of forfeit, we'll make sure we'll do it on the podcast as well, or we'll get a video done. Something, guys. I don't know. Be creative with it. It's actually a good idea.
Not too silly though, but let's see what you can come up with. So Ben will tell you exactly where you can find us on all socials, but good luck to the Socceroos. Make sure you tune in and cheer them on in their big games against Lebanon. But Ben will tell you exactly where you can find us now.
Yeah, guys, we're at Football Friends Pod on Insta and TikTok. We're at Ben and Steph Pod on X, and Football Friends with Ben and Steph on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. We'll be back next week to discuss the Socceroo games, and we'll be previewing the next round. It's going to be a big game between the boys, so we'll see who comes out on top, but we'll see you guys next Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, friend.
Fuck you lot, where's the beer?